So, speaking of that, we're going to talk about Eric Clapton and his journey to the Stratocaster, the Fender Stratocaster. So quick like, subscribe.
And hit the bell as well.
And thanks for joining us one more time. Thrilling round. Sean.
Boom. Baxter.
That's it. Thanks for joining us. We'll take
See you
care.
later.
Bye. No, so Eric Clapton, famous from the Yardbirds to Cream.
To Eric Clapton.
To Eric. There's nothing else. Just that. No, I was just going to say like those early. John Mayall and the Blues Breakers. The early years. He's a Gibson guy.
Yep.
He's playing Les Pauls and he's playing SGs 335s.
That's right.
He's a humbucker man through and through.
That's right. It seems so.
And then it was a overnight switch, it seems.
Yep.
For a lot of people. And
Stratocaster.
Bam, like a completely different instrument.
Yeah. All the way.
Why on earth did this happen? Now, this is documented from Eric Clapton. It's documented from just all sorts of historians as well. But we'll just talk about it a little bit briefly. You might know the answers. We might add some of our 2 cents here as well. But it's just a fun conversation to have, and we hope you enjoy it a little bit. So this happened in a time of great influences to Clapton as well.
Yes.
So he grew up with his heroes like Buddy Guy, Buddy Holly. Of course, you already played it.
Yeah.
But then Sir Jimmy.
Yeah, we had Jimi Hendrix,
And with Jimi Hendrix's, passing, and I think there was almost a spiritual torch being handed over in some ways.
Well, there was the story of didn't Clapton buy Hendrix a guitar, a left-handed Strat, and then he never got it.
He was meant to give it to him. He was supposed to see him that night. Something came up, and then that was the night Jimmy died. He was going to give it to him the next day, maybe. But so that I think that sort of haunted Clapton for quite a while, and probably still like a core memory of his.
That'd be a shame, if you died overnight, I'd be like, man.
I didn't give him that mac and cheese. The mac and cheese I had for him. I want to give him that.
Mac and cheese.
I had this mac and cheese that I was gonna. I already ate some of it, but it's the KFC mac and cheese, which is my favorite mac and cheese. I really like the KFC mashed potatoes.
You're a KFC fanatic.
I like KFC,
which I didn't.
Well, that's our fancy meal. When I'm
fancy.
All that stuff's expensive. I mean, it's
We've
not.
done some KFC together.
KFC's nice. Expensive.
It is expensive.
It's fancy. It's not like And cookout's expensive too. Anyway, sorry, we're getting this off topic. I'm sorry. Oh, also, quick shout out to Sanchez Pickups.
That's right.
Now I'm gonna grab his little logo, which I think is baller. This is a great sticker.
It's a rooster.
But he sent us a set of pickups, just saying as a thank you, just for like the videos we do and everything. Yeah, so I think we have not put them in a guitar yet. We will. We're gonna pick out which guitar of mine to throw that set into.
We'll kind of do a back and forth comparison and show you what they can do.
Maybe I should do it in Jad's guitar, the one I'm switched pickups for already,
just
and not tell him. And they'll be like, "Yo, Jad, you got some Sanchez pickups?" All of a sudden, but no, he's such a cool guy. Sorry. Anyway, back to Eric Clapton. Thank you. Thank you, Sir Sanchez.
That's right.
So there was that going on. Also, his connection with Blind Faith. I can't speak today for some reason. Blind Faith. Steve Winwood, the whole there. But let's get into some of the changes of his style too.
Yeah. So
you can see his music style was changing.
He kind of went from that big, loud, distorted humbucker sound to
Right. Well, and think about that too. That was something else we were sort of talking about. I was going to bring it up later, but I think that's a good segue into it. He did go from that big, loud, distorted sound where it really does assault and damage your eardrums.
Yes.
And so you lose those frequencies and you start to go away from these sort of low end ones. You can hear the higher frequencies better.
That's right.
Because that might have been part of it, just like a subconscious part of it that we were sort of analyzing as we were thinking of this.
Well, and like Strats that have more of like a cut to them and stuff like that, just the way they play, the way they feel, all those good things. You know what I mean?
Yes. I mean, I think that's a big part of it.
Yeah,
I think the bigger part of it was just when he got it to, he's talked about a lot too, he has that connection to the body. Yeah. The bridge is sort of floating up high on a Les Paul and all the Gibson style guitars where he can actually have his hand, and he found himself playing with his fingers more. Yeah. And he likes that.
Yeah. It's actually, until I read that, I didn't personally realize that's a big deal for me. I didn't, I do that too, where I swap between fingers and I pick a lot. So it's like, oh, cool, it's right here.
And Clapton speaks about it. We all speak about it as guitar players. When you play a Les Paul versus a Stratocaster, you inherently play differently.
Yes.
You just do. It's a much more percussive instrument. It's chimier. That magical setting number 2, which is between the bridge and the middle. He uses that in Bell Bottom Blues for the solo, but also it's got that. There's no other tone that does that.
Yeah.
The out of phase tone, for all the Gibson stuff, does not do that.
Not really, yeah. And with that too, even like the electronics of a Strat, you know, the way that they kind of work with those pickups. If you have a loud amp, you can turn the guitar down to almost like 2 or 3, and you still have like a, you know, an amount of.
Yes.
I don't know. There's something really cool to a tone like that, you know.
No, like if you have a properly set up guitar, Stratocaster, and you have a great amp, like an old tube amp, you can really just ride. Like that show I did with you and James.
Volume the whole time. Dude.
68 Princeton reverb. I had no effects, just a volume, and I probably got more compliments about tone than almost anybody that's ever played there. As far as like, because it sounded great.
Yeah, no, I mean,
great guitar I was playing too. I was playing an Echo Park.
Yeah, with that in general, you know, James was playing a Strat too, and just Fender style amps,
65 style
through
Princeton.
2 Princetons cranked, and they sounded
fantastic. we were dimed out. Like we were at like 8.
Yeah, and it wasn't ear-bleedingly loud.
They were pointing up a little bit, so but it was awesome.
It was awesome.
I could get feedback if I needed it. It was so cool.
So
it changes like the way you can play so much.
Yeah.
Like the Stratocaster is a different machine entirely. Ergonomically, like when I hold my Les Paul, like I have to think entirely different.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
Yeah.
Yeah, you went from Les Paul to a Strat over time, you know. Did you feel like that was a big deal? Like, and just looking back now?
I think I shifted over there because, see, this is something nobody cares about because we're talking about Clapton. But I shifted over because like I grew up, you know, in the 90s and like it wasn't really great Fender Stratocasters at this point. Yeah. They were cool, but like I'd never played a custom shop or even heard about a custom shop. I didn't know that existed. I'd never played a vintage Strat. I was playing like 90s Strats with like, you know, noiseless pickups a lot and like weird necks, flat radiuses, and I was like, it's all right. Yeah. And so then when I finally got older and could play a Gibson, I was like, this is amazing. Yeah. And like I was playing like some vintage Les Pauls and cool SGs I get my hands on, and then I got to play Richard Lloyd's Stratocaster, which is a vintage 60 Strat early, and that thing, I didn't know guitars could be that good. And that was my first sort of like,
this
Strat
is a good
moment.
Strat. Yeah.
And he had me playing on the tour with him one time. I was playing a Japanese built surf green Stratocaster, and I tried to buy it from him. He's like, I'm going to keep that. I was like, really? Well, I would have given him hundreds of dollars at that point.
Tens of dollars.
Hundreds of dollars. You know, now it's over hundreds of dollars. It is still hundreds of dollars, just you have to multiply it. Yeah. I sort of went on that. It's when I realized the sonic landscape I could create.
Yeah.
And that's what Clapton says too. Like, you know, he uses the noiseless pickups himself in his guitars. Yeah. And from talking to the old head of the Fender custom shop, I asked him like what was like working with Clapton. And he goes, well, he's like a normal guy, just a normal guy that doesn't have to drive himself anywhere. And you're like, oh, it's funny. But no, so it's just a little bit different. I was like, what does he like with the guitars? He's like, does he care about the weight? He's like, he's never asked for a specific weight. He's never asked if it's light or heavy. I'm like, what does he do when he plays it? You hand him the guitar, he plays it within a minute. He can tell you if the guitar is good or bad. And he'll hand it back. And if it's not good, or if he wants to get tweaked a little bit, he's like, all right, this is it.
That's cool. Yeah.
But he's not, he's picky, and in the way he's like, he knows quickly if it's a good or bad guitar, I think.
That's neat.
And so I think that's just how I feel like he approaches the instrument as a tool.
Yeah.
Whereas a lot of us are, you know, collectors, and we value and we worship these instruments like the bursts.
Yeah.
And I think Clapton views them much more as his vehicle for making music. Which is what they are.
Yeah. Well, and, you know, just the whole story of him kind of finding them and stuff like that and piecing together, you know, one out of like a barrel. It's neat to hear that aspect of it, and the fact, too, that he went for a maple fretboard with those first couple and stuff, you know, and he still leans towards that.
Isn't it weird that he never met Leo Fender?
That is weird, yeah.
That makes no sense to me.
Well, they being alive at the same time, coming up in that, you know, rock and roll bombastic era of it's happening.
None of that computes to me. Like, Leo Fender's met some people he didn't need to meet, and he didn't meet Eric Clapton. You know?
Exactly.
Like I never met Leo Fender because it just wasn't in the cards. But I just Eric Clapton's one you should have met.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and it seems like for Clapton too, that was something that seemed to, you know, kind of, you know, bug him a bit that he never did get to meet Leo because of how fondly he thinks of the Stratocaster. He thinks it's the perfect guitar.
Well, I'd say like some of Eric Clapton's like peak compositions and tonal creations were done right there with, like, you know, from the Layla sessions and the Derek and the Dominoes output. Like that's what a Strat can do in the hands of a monster with, you know, talent from the gods all around you.
Yeah, I was gonna say, if you just listen to the Layla and Other Assorted Love Songs record, all the tones on that just sound phenomenal. Like, even the tones that you could argue and say, oh, this is like bad tone, it's iconic tone.
Recorded on a Champ too.
Yeah, it's just like,
insane. Whoa. It's like, oh, so good. That's like, don't get me wrong, I'm still a huge fan of the old Clapton's Woman tone. That's how I test every Gibson of that sort of style. I always juice that tone down. Not quite to 0, but almost. Maybe 1 or 2, sometimes 0. It depends how hot those pickups are and how treble bass they are. But man, it's fun.
Yeah,
I like guitars.
I'm a Strat guy till the day I die. I'm sorry, I've tried.
No, you got that one Gibson.
I do.
But you have to. But
like
the way you play right now is very percussive.
Yeah, well, it's because I'm bad.
I mean, I'm not going to argue that point.
Yes.
No, I think your styles will change, and you'll see where like the Les Paul sits.
Yeah, and I think on that, especially hearing like your tale of it, and even somebody like Eric Clapton's, not comparing myself to Clapton, but
we're just like him.
Yeah, I mean, we're basically the same. He just has people drive him. It's fine.
I'm like Clapton's fingernail.
But yeah, it's neat to hear some of these guys and their journeys that they went on.
So that's like cliff notes for his journey to the Stratocaster. We've left out some things because it's all been history booked. But it's not rocket science. It just sort of happened.
Yeah.
He evolved into it, and it's
Yeah.
I think he pretty much plays his Strats like 95% of the time, and his other guitars he picks them up every once in a while and plays them. But like that's he's a big acoustic player obviously too. But that's a whole other video.
That is. That's right.
Thank you again for joining us.
Yes.
Peace be with you.
And also with you.
We're still glad. Thank you. What do they say in Handmaid's Tale? It's something about it in his eyes or something.
Peace, sucker.
No. Yeah, I haven't watched the last season yet, so don't spoil it for me.
That's what they say in the last season. Sorry.
That's like Bulworth. Again, I'm going to talk about Bulworth. I've talked about it with Jonathan before. It's one of the best political movies ever. If you haven't seen it, it's Warren Beatty, Halle Berry. Freaking phenomenal. Where he gets like something happens to him and he goes into like a concussion. He's a famous politician and he can only speak in rap. And it's hilarious.
That sounds so dope.
And he just starts telling the truth. And then everything they have to like
spitting game.
The powers that be do not like this. Because if the politicians told the truth, we'd be over.
Farewell.
It's the end of the world. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Well, and again, peace be with you one more time.
And also with you. Like, subscribe, hit the bell, boom.